Monterrey, once the sparkling promise of 21st century Mexico, is now a trembling hostage in the grip of a violent drug war. To see heavily armed soldiers in the streets is commonplace. To hear gunfire, only slightly less so. The Zetas have moved in. They are Mexico's most violent, most depraved, most feared crime cartel, and they have settled here with a cruel vengeance. Monterrey used to be known as an industrial machine, the symbol of Mexico's economic opportunity, and it still is. But it's also now known as a battlefield in a drug war that's made it one of the most violent cities in one of the most dangerous countries in the world. The Zetas don't just kill, they execute, and in the most gruesome ways imaginable. Bodies may show up in any number of different cities at any time, or simply disappear forever. As difficult as this is to look at, the severed head has become a trademark for the Zetas. To look away would miss the horror of what life has become here. They are psychopaths. They believe the only protection for their souls will come from Santa Muerte, the saint of death. Shrines like this have sprung up around the country. Outside this one, we met Alfredo Corchado, a Mexican-born American journalist who's been covering the drug cartels for 9 years.
You worship to the death of saint, the saint of death, that they protect you. They offer protection for you. I mean, it's kind of a symbol of what death has become in Mexico. It's almost an industry.
He told us about one of the Zeta leaders, Miguel Trevino Morales, and about how he presides over the initiation of new recruits by instructing them to execute a victim with a bullet to the head.
He puts his hand on that person's heart, and he'll give him a gun, and he'll say, shoot. And if for any reason the guy's heart trembles, he says, no, you're not Zeta quality. You got to be a cold-blooded killer, like me.
The Zetas target not just rival gang members, they also murder the most innocent of victims. Watch the white Mini Cooper. On a Thursday afternoon last August, it led a small convoy to the front door of the Casino Royale in Monterrey. The Zetas stepped out, poured gasoline in the entranceway, and tossed in a grenade. Apparently, they were enforcing an extortion claim. The fire killed more than 50 people. Patricia Signs now marks that horrible afternoon every Thursday, along with others who lost loved ones. She was in the casino with her husband when the fire broke out. People stampeded, and she and her husband were separated.
Logro contactarlo con el teléfono, pero con...
I was able to reach him by cell phone. His speech was slow. He told me, I can't breathe. I'm choking, my love.
Y yo todo el tiempo preguntándole, ¿dónde estás, mi amor? ¿Dónde estás?
I asked him, where are you? Where are you? But he didn't answer.
She never saw him again. It was the bloodiest crime in Monterrey's history and a turning point in the consciousness of the country.
If it can happen in Monterrey, it can happen in Mexico City. And I think since then, people in Mexico City are sort of on edge. It's an election year, and there's that sense if the cartels want to take this to another level, a more desperate level, what's the best thing? You put some heads along Reforma at the Monument of the Angel.
You mean heads, like people's heads?
Yeah, people's heads.
Cut them off.
Cut them off.
Dump them in the street.
And I think that's going to take things to a whole different level.
And that happens, you won't be surprised.
I won't be surprised. I'm kind of wondering when this is going to happen.
Why hasn't it happened already?
But
what is it like covering this story? Are you scared?
I often tell myself that it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel fear. Feeling fear is what keeps you alive.
The country's police forces either cannot or will not stop this. Many of them have been corrupted. So too is the prison system, as was horribly demonstrated just a couple of weeks ago. The trouble started early on a Sunday at the Apodaca prison on the outskirts of Monterrey. There was a fire. Chaos. Outside, relatives of the inmates gathered at the gates. Inside, there wasn't a riot so much as a massacre. Zeta prisoners strangled, stabbed, or beat to death 44 members of the rival Gulf Cartel. And then 30 of the Zetas escaped into the night. None of it would have been possible without the cooperation of prison guards and administrators. A couple of days later, police arrested 28 guards as well as the director of the prison for aiding in the escape and massacre. 30 cold-blooded killers are now free again. Among them, the notorious Oscar Manuel Bernal, also known as the Spider. These are Marines, a relatively small force of highly trained soldiers who are trusted as incorruptible. We went with them as they set out to track down the fugitives. This has got to be one of the more frustrating missions for the Marines. They're trying to recapture members of the Zetas gang. Gang members who had already been arrested, tried, convicted, and sent to prison, from where they easily escaped, leaving behind a bloody massacre and the message that they control the prisons too. The captain of this group tells us he's looking for the Spider, so we've gone to his mother's house. This is what happens when Marines do police work. They arrive heavily armed and intimidating. They set up a secure perimeter around the whole neighborhood. They are ready for a gunfight. But they don't find the Spider, they just find his mother. The captain asks the questions. She says she knows nothing. Will she call them if she gets information about her son? What he did was murder a police commander. No wonder the Marines routinely wear masks. It protects their identities. All who try to stop the cartels put their lives, as well as the lives of their families, at risk. But the captain tells us later he believes he's on the right side of this fight, that the government's decision to unleash the armed forces in a war against the cartels was the right one.
Claro que sí. Estamos ganando la guerra contra la delincuencia organizada.
Of course we are winning the war against organized crime. I'm sure of it. In the name of our institution, we will win this war.
But many disagree. Mexico's borders allow the two essential elements of the war, drugs and guns, a free pass into the country. Drugs come from around the world into Mexico through its southern border with Guatemala. Guns come through its northern border from the United States. This is the real problem, says security analyst Alberto Islas. To beat the cartels, you have to disrupt the logistics of their operations. You have to eliminate the corruption that exists in the customs services at the borders. That's the problem that needs fixing.
If you go from Mexico to the United States, you take about an hour and a half to cross customs. Coming back into Mexico, you take less than 30 seconds. All the guns that are found in Mexico is not because the U.S. sells them. It's because somebody at the Mexican customs let those guns pass by.
In other words, it is the cartels who control Mexico's borders, not the government, and that has to change. Not surprisingly, the rich have found their own way to stay safe even in Monterrey. This is San Pedro, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in all of Mexico. Among its residents are said to live some of the leaders of the drug cartels. The mayor of San Pedro, Mauricio Fernandez, has unveiled his own unique strategy for dealing with the cartels. He is becoming internationally known for his aggressive tactics against drug violence. Essentially, he fights fire with fire. He pays for information from anyone who will give it. He makes sure his police are well paid and well armed. Unlike practically any other politician on the planet, Fernandez brags about how high taxes are in San Pedro. The money pays for the police, the weapons, and his own intelligence service, which he likens to the CIA.
Yes, yes. I have private intelligence and public intelligence. I have about 500 people and citizens that help me in the surroundings. They can call the intelligence center, and and they pass information.
On his first day in office, he casually announced the sudden death of a gangster who threatened his life.
Ahorita me acaban de informar que el negro Saldaña, que aparentemente es el que está pidiendo mi cabeza, hoy amaneció muerto en el Distrito Federal.
The police hadn't even discovered the body yet. They would find it in the trunk of a car in Mexico City. Suddenly, the country was buzzing. How did Fernandez know? Did he have something to do with the murder?
People wanted to know how you knew that. Right.
Well,
I want to know why you said that publicly.
Well, it was very simple. It was one of the persons who publicly mentioned that he was going to kill me. And I was very much interested whatever was going to happen to this guy when he was found dead in Mexico City.
Not too long ago, he says, another thug tried to take over San Pedro. He killed a police officer.
He killed the policeman for me to know that he was here and then everybody to know that he wasn't the boss. By noon, in the following day, he was dead. Good luck.
That sends a message.
So it's, we don't like that people here.
Yeah. How did he die?
Pardon me?
How did he die?
He was shot.
By police?
No, by some individuals that killed him.
Earlier this week, we were in San Pedro and we spoke to the mayor, Mauricio Fernandez.
Yes.
Why do you laugh?
I think his approach is not the best one.
Because?
No, I mean, you cannot be involved with organized crime.
Is he?
He is involved with organized crime. You cannot be involved with organized crime. You cannot harbor their families in your municipality. You cannot say that you make agreements with organized crime, because then you're part of organized crime.
Fernandez seems to have bought peace at a high price in San Pedro, but he revels in the vigilante image.
So far, the 4 guys who mentioned that they were planning to kill me, well, they are dead, fortunately. So right now, the score 4-0.
But the vigilantism of San Pedro and the horrors of the drug war are not the whole picture of Mexico. A sun-filled sky, a sandy beach. These are the things that come to mind when many Canadians think about Mexico and about an escape from the bone-chilling winter. This is Mazatlan on the Pacific coast, a resort town whose reputation has been darkened by a relatively small number of violent crimes against tourists here, and what appear to be some gangland slangs among the locals.
Good to see you.
Welcome to Paradise Great Grand. This way, please.
Wow.
Beautiful. None of it phases Laura and Phil Contini. They started coming to Mazatlan on holidays a few years ago. Now they're on the verge of buying a condo for their retirement.
Oh my God.
And why not? A couple of $100,000 buys a view like this.
We haven't seen anything better than this.
No.
That view is just amazing.
Right. Is it a good time for you to buy this?
I think it's really good. Our dollar is strong. Prices here are very, very reasonable. It's a good time, I think.
This is what you see is the pool area. And we have decided
It's not that the Continis don't know what's going on in places like Monterrey. They do. It's not that they haven't read about crimes in Mazatlan. They have. But they are able to balance those stories against their own experience and calculate the risks.
So when you read these news stories that you get really big play in Canada about Canadians being victims of crime here, what's your instant reaction?
How unfair it is, how unfair the media is, because it's blown out of proportion. You know, when I read yesterday 6 Canadians were murdered in all of Mexico last year. We live in Edmonton, the homicide capital of Canada. 45 Canadians were murdered in Edmonton last year. You don't read those stories.
Mazatlan has increased the police presence in tourist areas to make a display of its concern for safety, but the tourist industry so vital to Mazatlan is hurting anyway. Increasingly, it's the Canadians who keep the tourist areas of Mazatlan alive. Some of the night spots hang the flag and tune in the curling just to please the Canucks. And that goes down very well with the Continis. If you ask the experts whether it's safe, the answer is yes, so long as you're careful about where you go and what you do.
Of course, if it's 3 o'clock at night, you're drunk, and you're walking out of a bar or cantina, people will take advantage of you in Tennessee, in Ontario, in Peru, wherever. You just have to reduce those risky attitudes that you have for yourself. But it is safe for tourists to come to Mexico.
But I always tell people the beach is not the border. You know, I think it's safer to say that if you go to the beach, just make sure you pack enough suntan lotion. You know, if you go to the border, it's a whole different thing. You know?
The country's war against the drug cartels has dragged on for nearly 6 years. During that time, 50,000 people have died. 50,000. This is a much bigger thing than a drug war now.
We debate this as journalists. Is it an insurgency? Is it terrorism? Is it an old-fashioned drug war? In the end, we let Washington, D.C. decide, let Mexico City decide. But in the end, what we see on the streets are people are dying.
Innocent people dying violently on a scale that can only be compared to a war. North America's war. Keith Bogue, CBC News, Monterrey.